Good morning, guys. Matt from Blaze Capital here. So today I just wanted to go over support and resistance lines and a bit of trend lines with you guys. So first couple things I want to preface this by. So some people don't know what the candles actually represent. So based on the time frame, that's going to be like each candle is going to represent in this chart one day. So red candles start at the top of the body and then end at the bottom of the body of the day. The wicks and tails are the highest point of the day and the lowest point of the day. And then with a green candle, they start at the bottom of the body and then end at the top of the body. And then the wicks and tails are the highs and lows of the day. So that's what that means. So another thing I wanted to mention, all this technical analysis stuff it's not predictive, as Chartman Dan says, it's reactive. So we get a couple scenarios based off of our technical analysis, and then we can make reactions based on those. Generally, we want to get the best risk-reward ratio as possible and have a plan in place for best case and worst case scenarios, whether that be a stop loss or a sell limit or whatever you're going to do based on your trade. So we're going to start by drawing our support and resistance lines. So support goes underneath the candles and resistance goes over top. Generally, we try and line up as many data points as we possibly can to get a good idea of what's happening. So I'm going to do GDX here. I've been charting this one for months, ever since this inverse head and shoulders pattern started. So I have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen, and then I'm going to play a replay for you guys after so you can kind of see how it plays out. The other thing I wanted to mention, so an analogy I like to use, I'm a personal trainer in my life, so I use a lot of physics. So the conservation of momentum says that an object's going to stay in motion until it runs into an outside resistance. So in this case, an object, aka the stock chart, is going to continue in motion until it hits either a trend line or a resistance or a support, most of the time. All of this stuff is just based on psychology and people wanting to buy and sell. So with a resistance, that's a place where people want to sell the stock, and then when there's people trying to buy, that's the support level, and then it's also where people they don't want to sell the stock as much. So all of this is going to come into an equilibrium eventually, and the stock finds its fair value. So you just need to react to what the chart tells you and then make your decisions based off that. Okay, so we're going to start with GDX here. We're going to do some support and resistances here. So I generally try and use the bodies primarily, and then I find the wicks and the tails most of the time are either testing the support or resistance lines. They're not as quite as significant, if that makes sense. So they're more the bodies are more absolute, and then the wicks and tails are usually tests of either the trend line or the support and resistance line. So we're going to draw some lines in here. So we're going to look back here. So we got one somewhere around 2179, 2218-ish. Where is it? There. So you just want to try and get as many data points as possible, and that's going to be more significant. We also want to be really careful not to buy just because it's hitting a support line, because as you can see here, when it lost this 2177 level after testing it a bunch of times, same as down here. So it tested this 21-ish area a lot. There, 21. It tested this a lot, and then when it lost this for the final time, it just waterfalled. So you just want to be really careful. Don't just blindly buy a support level and hope for the best. You want to have a plan in place for best and worst case scenarios. So that's how we do those. We're going to draw a couple more here. There. That one's off a bit. There. So this magnet tool just helps you pick out the support and resistance lines a bit easier. really, really big fan of that. So next we're going to do some trend lines here. So I'm going to draw the bottom up like this. Again, we're just trying to get as many data points as we can in. That looks pretty close. And as the chart gets more developed, you can always move these lines around. So you might see that you're off slightly, and then you're just going to readjust the trend line later. There. So this one I was off a little bit. There, let's try that. So now we're going to play a replay of what happened for the last 4 or 5 months here, and we'll see how well the support and resistance lines and the trend lines acted out. So all this data is pulled from back here. When there's a lot of people or a lot of trades that happened above where you are, we call that overhead supply. So that means there's a lot of people who bought up in this area, and they're going to want to get out. So that's when a stock's going to have a harder time to go up than when there's no overhead supply, so in a blue sky breakout. So we're going to hit this play button here, and we're going to kind of see. I might have to adjust these trend lines. Like, I can't fully remember exactly where they go, but that should be pretty close, I think. There. Okay, so we'll hit play. So as you can see here, they're coming back to test the trend lines pretty frequently. That one dropped there. Oh, look where that hit. Right exactly on the support and the trend line. So this line was off slightly, pretty close though. This one held up pretty good. So you would have just made adjustments here as the day goes on, but for the most part, the stock generally followed between these two uptrends, and then you can make a downtrend the same way. So if we erase these lines here, this is a really steep drop, so I'll probably try and find some other explanations. So that was a really steep drop here. And then, so you want this to break over the downtrend line, and then that would be a good buy signal. And then it went up from $21.56 all the way up to $23, which is a pretty good move. So we're gonna go over a few other charts here too, and I'll just go over how I do the support and resistance lines on them. This was just kind of a demonstration of like what to be looking for when you're plotting them, and then that in general they do hold up pretty well. As you can see, it did bounce off those support and resistance lines pretty frequently, so those are very good ways for you to look to enter and exit, and it gives you a high probability of success using stop losses. Okay, so the next request I had was the S&P 500, so we're going to go over the daily chart quickly, and then the 5-minute chart on that one. Okay, so I generally do the support and resistance lines first. Again, you're not going to be perfect every time. You just have to be reasonably close. And we got Another thing to mention is when you break through the support or resistance in one direction or the other, it's going to become the opposite. So if we get over top of this resistance, it's going to act as support the next time the way back up. So here on this red bar, it acted as support, and then we failed here, but it caught some bids here. I think there's another one there. Yeah, so there's another support here. You can see this candle here back tested there and then continued upwards. This one closed here. So this is a hammer. This is one of my favorite things to look for, is when the body of a candle closes or starts at a resistance and then closes over top of it and then back test below it. That's a really bullish signal. So if you would have bought there, you would have made a pretty good return up there. So that's the daily ones. You, again, like I was saying before, you can draw support and resistance lines till you're blue in the face. Eventually you're going to get too much data on your screen. So I try and just pick out the most significant ones. And then if you scroll back here and look back here, you're going to find similar support and resistance lines in the past as well. So they generally hold up pretty good in the future. As Justin says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So there's high probability. All this is just based on probability, and you want to just use the info to the best of your ability to try and catch the moves in between. So there's the support and resistance lines for the S&P 500 on the daily chart. This one's really hard to draw trend lines on because it's been so parabolic lately. Yeah, that doesn't make, so like there, for example, it doesn't make sense for me to draw it there. That wasn't enough data points for me to be confident in. So right there looks like a reasonable trend line. So we got lots of data points connected here, and then it follows it up pretty closely. Again, you just have to use common sense, because sometimes it just, like, it's not going to look right, and it probably isn't right if it doesn't look right. So there's the daily chart here. I'm going to leave the daily lines on for now. We're going to go in and look at the 5-minute chart. So in general, if you're very focused on a couple stocks, I like to have the daily lines on and then do the 5-minute ones as well. So 5 minutes are good for entry levels, and then the daily ones will be good for like your entry and exit, because they're going to hold up a lot better. So as you can see here, we open up the 5-minute chart, and where is the support and resistance lines very strong? Oh, it's right at the daily lines. So this is from Friday. We bounced around this line, 6 candles there, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So they kind of act as magnets, and then we'll plot our 5-minute resistances after. So I'm just going to delete these lines. These are just kind of a demonstration. So we're going to go back here. So with 5-minute data, I generally I try and get about 3 or 4 days, just so you have more data points. So if we go back here, there's quite a bit of hits off there, there, there. So this is the auto function. It kind of gets annoying when you're trying to do stuff, so to take that off there and there. So that's how we're looking for the support and resistance lines. You can draw trend lines on the 5-minute as well. So like this one, for example, we draw from probably back here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So here the trend line, a couple bounces off there, and then we end up coming back and closing pretty much at that trend line at the end of the day here. So those are just another way. And then if we're going to look at drawing downtrend lines, so if you're doing a day trade or something, you would So see these candles here? We draw a line probably about. So this is where it kind of gets annoying if you have the magnet on. It's a little bit harder, so I'm going to turn that off. So right there. So this is our downtrend line. We drew it from here to here, and then got rejected here at the downtrend. And then here we finally got over it. Came back down, back up, back down, tested the downtrend line, and then we continued up here. So that's good. Makes a higher low here. And then we continued up all the way to 2185. Okay, so that's the S&P. I'm going to do just some overall charts for, I'll do Canopy, and somebody requested FUNKO, the FUNKO one, so we'll do that. I'll delete my previous lines here. I'm just going to do the daily chart. All right, so we're going to come up here to the top of this candle here, and then we're going to try and get as many lines on the top as we can. So this is like a flag or consolidation here. So that looks reasonable there. There. So here we got quite a bit of touches here on both sides, so I'm pretty happy with this. So we got a back test here, back test, close over, open at the line. So with this kind of pattern, we're waiting for it to break and hold over top of one of these uptrend or downtrend lines. So we have two scenarios that you have to be prepared for. So if this breaks, so it's tested outside these lines a couple times, but it came back in, so it's not ready to break out or break down yet. So we're waiting for one of these to break and hold outside, and that would be a good buy signal. So we just keep getting faked out here with Canopy, so it's not ready to go one direction or the other. So you want to wait for confirmation. So it's going to break out. Ideally, you want it to come back and back test the downtrend line and then continue upwards. Or conversely, we want it to break outside downwards, come back and back test, and then continue downwards for a short position. So there's that, and then we'll draw some support and resistance lines here. So there's the flag that you guys can look at. I'm going to close this off just again, like there gets too much data on the screen if you have too many things going on, so I'm going to get a little technical difficulties there with my chart. All right, so now we're going to draw our support and resistance lines here. So we want to get as many points as possible. So there, that looks pretty good there. 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 I'm pretty happy with that. Again, we don't want to put too many support and resistance lines on here because it just gets to be too much noise. So we just try and get as many data points as we can. So I'm really happy with these here. So with this support, we see we got a bunch of candles touching here. Bounce, 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 bounce. Finally breaks over. Up here, rejected, 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 rejected. And then here, kind of bouncing around here. So I would consider this here is like kind of an equilibrium channel. So it's just basically what the stock's doing is bouncing, 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 bouncing. And then we're going to wait for it to break one way or the other before we make any short or long-term plays rather than, so right now it's getting very tight here. So we should be expecting a move one way or the other within the next couple weeks here up until probably beginning of April. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. So I'm going to post this in the group here. And then Antonio requested FUNKO, so we'll go over that one here. And then I promised Andy that I would go over Ian on here. Oh, so weirdly enough, I already had this one charted from before. I charted this back in February, I think. So as you can see, this is another example of how well it held up. So I pulled this resistance here all the way back from this line. And where did it go up to after earnings? It opened right at that line, and then we just tanked all day, all day, all day, all day, all day. Came back here, probably hit a support line somewhere around here, actually. Yep, oh weird, hit right there. And then continued back upwards. So here we'll just extend our trend line here all the way up. And there we go. So in all honesty, I probably wouldn't change anything here. You could draw a shorter term trend line here if you wanted to. But this is pretty parabolic here, like it's gone straight up and straight down, but it's generally following this trend. I would just consider this would be outlier information. And in general, it has kind of followed the same uptrend, so. All right, there you go, Antonio. I'll send that one in the group as well. All right, so last one we'll do is Yanthus Capital for Andy. Weird, I already had this one done too. So there you can see we got our support in place, resistance. We'll add in another resistance up at the top here, right about there. So yeah, there's that, and then we'll do a demonstration. I know I haven't done a whole lot of downtrend lines here. There. So again, conservation momentum, it's going to continue upwards till it hits resistance or support, and then it's going to head back down till it hits either the trend line, resistance or support, and then continue back upwards, and you just have to plan your actions accordingly. All right, sweet. So if you guys have any questions, feel free. I'm going to try and keep doing an educational video each week. Yeah, thanks a lot. Let's make some money. I'm back. I just realized I didn't really explain how I picked these very well, so I'll just go over this one more time. So we're gonna look here, support. So we had two really tight hammers here, so I'd treat that as pretty good support there. Resistance, pretty much right where it closed on Friday. Our next level of resistance, so yeah, here there's a pretty good, if we can get over this 726 level, come up, back test, continue up, there's pretty good risk reward here. You're gonna get a little bit of resistance up around this 742-ish level here, and probably 753. So again, like you can draw support and resistance lines all day, but we want to just get as many data points as possible in here. So probably take that one out. There. So this looks really strong as of right now, but we don't know what's actually going to happen. So I wouldn't buy right here until it gets over this level, because that's been pretty strong support and resistance. So you don't want to buy here because your risk reward's not great. If it fails here and comes back all the way down to 670, you're going to lose 50 cents if you don't have a proper stop loss in place. Trend lines here. I should have one there probably. Yeah, that looks like it's got quite a bit of data points in there. Actually, probably go a bit higher. There. So there's trend line 1, and then we'll do another one like there. And then downtrend line from there down. There. So we finally broke the downtrend line. Now we just want to continue up here. There you go.